Hey there friends and folks, today I'm going to be going over the basics of how to crimp, as well as how to use a crimp cover. Crimping is an essential technique when working with beading wire, and for the technique today I'll be using my crimping pliers, some medium soft flex beading wire, and some 2mm crimps with 3mm crimp covers. We're going to be talking about each of these components individually one at a time, so let's start with our beading wire. Beading wire is a woven stainless steel wire coated in nylon that is ideal for strung pieces because of its strength and versatility. It's subtle, easy to move, and comes in a range of colors. The clear wire is what I usually gravitate towards, but that's because I usually work with silver and copper metals. And that said, the descriptor of clear can be misleading, but it refers to the coating of the wire itself, which is clear, and it shows the gray stainless steel wire underneath. You can also buy silver-plated and gold-plated wire at a higher price point if you want to invest in that, but since most of my strung pieces completely cover that wire, I don't ever really feel the need to go that route. Now, because beading wire is layered stainless steel and nylon, it doesn't knot as effectively as other stringy materials like silk or stretch cord might, and that is why we have crimps. A crimp is a tiny metal tube, typically ranging from 1 to 4mm in size, that you close around your wires to hold them in place. Whenever I buy crimps, I always buy either bare copper or sterling crimps because they're the most malleable, and plated crimps have a tendency to just kind of fracture under the pressure of being crimped, and they're not super high quality. And you might ask, what if I'm working with a color besides copper or silver? Well, I rarely do, but when I do, I just get a crimp cover in the color metal that I'm working with, but I still have the crimp underneath be a sterling or copper crimp. Now for these fancy crimping pliers. Mine have definitely worn down, but thankfully they're not too expensive in the first place. Economy crimping pliers start around $10, but if you want to invest in a slightly better pair, I am in love with these Xuron crimpers. They're only about $5 more, which is great for a higher quality pair of pliers. And some people are indifferent to it, but I personally notice a huge difference, and that $5 is definitely worth it. I've had these for about 5 years now, and they pretty much have worn their usefulness. The spring here is actually snapped off, and I've kind of like warped it back into place, so they still work, but I have a feeling this isn't going to last much longer. Now that we've talked about our basic tools, let's jump into crimping. There's a misconception that all you need to do is thread your crimp and smash it down with your chain nose pliers, and I want to let you know that that is not the way to go. When you simply flatten your crimp around your wires, you don't effectively crimp all the way around both wires securing them. Your wires are left with a little bit of wiggle room, and they'll eventually slip out over time. This tooth of the crimping plier allows you to crimp around your two wires separately, securing them individually, as well as fold that crimp in half to minimize its presence. But then, even if the folded crimp is too much of an eyesore for you, you can cover it with that crimp cover, which gives it the appearance of a simple seamed bead. So to properly close a crimp, you'll start by threading your wire through the crimp around whatever you're attaching your wire to, like a clasp or a jump ring, and then back through the crimp. Two things to look out for. First, make sure you aren't pulling your loop too tight. If you tighten your wire around your clasp, for example, and then crimp, your clasp won't be able to move as naturally, and because of that tension, it will also wear much faster. You want to leave some wiggle room so that your clasp can move around most naturally. Second, you want to make sure the wires going through your crimp aren't touching, so when you crimp, you fold your crimp in half and the wires are in their own separate halves. I'm going to go ahead and situate my crimp in the middle of my crimping pliers with one wire on each side and crimp down, creating that first bend. You'll see now you've created this V shape, and your wires should be fairly secure in their own half of the crimp. You'll now squash that V so it's folded in half, and there you have it. You've successfully crimped. Now for the crimp cover, it looks like this half moon shape, and you're essentially going to gently close this around your crimp. You always want to use a cover that is 1mm bigger than your original crimp. Any smaller and it won't fit, and any bigger it might slip off. So I'm going to hold my crimp cover in this valley of the crimping pliers and gently close it around my crimp. You want to just gently close it around so it wraps your crimp and makes it look like a seamed bead. And there you have it, your crimp and crimp cover. I do want to emphasize that crimps are specifically designed for beading wire and aren't as effective when used with other stringy materials like silk or stretchy cord. Cords that can be knotted should be knotted because crimps have those sharper edges because they're metal and they wear into softer stringy materials over time and actually can contribute to the fragility of a piece rather than strengthen it. Maybe I'll do some knotting videos in the future, but for now, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you found this video helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments, and until next time, take care and bead well.